Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm going to tell you a story that doesn't begin with once upon a time, but with clinking glasses, forced smiles, and a bride's trembling heart. It was my wedding day, a day meant for joy, for love, for celebration, but instead, it became the stage for a moment no one would ever forget. A moment that split the room like a thunderclap and left even the most talkative relatives speechless. Lay down and don't forget to subscribe my channel for more interesting videos. The ceremony had gone smoothly, the vows were beautiful, and the guests were settling into dinner when the mic opened for speeches. That's when my stepmother, never one to hide her sharp tongue, stood up, champagne in hand, and said, "She's just pretending to be loved." A gasp rippled through the room. Before I could even react, my dad, once my hero, now a distant, disappointed figure, chuckled darkly and added, "She's lucky he even showed up." My vision blurred with humiliation and rage. I could feel the whispers building, like a storm gathering strength. But then, just as the tension became unbearable, my groom, David, stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He calmly took the mic, scanned the room, and locked eyes with the two of them. His voice was firm, but his hands trembled slightly. "I'm marrying her for this one reason," he said. "Because despite everything, despite people like you, she still believes in love, in forgiveness, in hope, and because she taught me how to believe again, too." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a fork drop. My stepmother sat down, eyes wide. My dad looked away, suddenly very interested in the floor. And me? I felt like the world had stopped, just for a second, to honor the truth. But that was only the beginning. After the wedding, a letter arrived at our honeymoon suite. No return address. Inside was a photograph of my groom, David, from years ago, standing next to a woman with the same engagement ring he had given me. Confused and shaken, I confronted him. His face paled. "I was going to tell you," he whispered, "but I didn't know how. That woman, she was my wife. She died in a car crash. I kept the ring, because it was the last part of her I had." Tears welled in my eyes, not from betrayal, but from understanding. David hadn't chosen me because I reminded him of someone else. He had chosen me because I helped him let go. But then, things got even stranger. The next day, we found out the accident that took his first wife's life wasn't an accident. The brakes were cut, and now someone was watching us. The air in the hotel suite had gone cold. David sat on the edge of the bed, the photo still in his hands, while I paced, trying to piece it all together. "She died in a car crash," he repeated, as if saying it again would make it make sense. "But the police never mentioned anything about the brakes being cut." I took the photo from him. The woman in it had soft eyes, kind eyes. There was something hauntingly familiar about her, almost like she was still watching over him, or warning me. That night, neither of us slept. I kept hearing sounds in the hallway. At 2:43 a.m., someone knocked once, just once, on our door. When we opened it, there was no one there. Just a single white envelope on the floor. No address, just a message inside. "She wasn't the only one. You're next if you don't stop digging." I looked at David. Who would want her dead? And why now? Why, after all these years? David's jaw clenched. Because I wasn't supposed to move on. Someone wanted me to stay broken. Before we could even process it, the hotel lights flickered. Then the fire alarm blared. We rushed out along with the rest of the guests, only to find smoke coming from the floor below us, but no fire. A diversion. When we returned to our suite, the photograph was gone. Back in our suite, the chaos from the fake fire alarm still lingered. Smoke from the extinguishers hung in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. But all I saw was the empty desk, the photo, gone. David searched the drawers, the floor, even the trash bin. Nothing. It was like the photo had vanished, like it had never existed. "Someone wanted to erase her," I whispered. David turned to me, eyes dark with fear and something else. "Guilt? I didn't just keep the ring," he admitted quietly. "I kept her journal." My breath caught. What? She was paranoid before she died. Thought someone was following her. She wrote everything down. Names, places, shadows. I didn't believe her. I thought it was trauma after her sister died. I stepped closer. "Where is it?" He hesitated. "It's at my parents' house, in the attic." "Then we go there, tonight." We drove for hours, silence thick between us. His parents lived in an old farmhouse on the edge of town, surrounded by woods that looked like they were hiding secrets of their own. When we arrived, the house was dark. Too dark.
"We're not supposed to be here," David muttered. "They're in Europe for a wedding, but I have a key." We slipped inside. The smell of old wood and dust greeted us like a memory. Up in the attic, it didn't take long. Tucked behind a box of Christmas lights and forgotten photo albums was a red leather notebook worn at the edges. David opened it slowly. The first page read, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident, and the first person you should suspect is the one who introduced us." We stared at each other. He swallowed. That was my brother. And that's when we heard the creak of the floorboard. We weren't alone. The creak was faint, but undeniable. Someone else was in the house. "We're not supposed to be here." David's hand shot out, silencing me before I could speak. But I stood frozen in the attic, surrounded by dusty memories and the smell of old wood and dust greeted us like another sound followed. Up in the attic, downstairs, it didn't take long. A soft tucked behind a box of Christmas lights and forgotten photo albums was a red leather notebook worn at the edges. Now, David opened it slowly. We slipped behind a stack of old trunks near the attic's corner. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." I clutched the journal to my chest, and the first person you should suspect his phone is the one who introduced us, using it like a mirror to check the staircase. He swallowed. Someone was coming up, step by slow step. Then we saw him. We heard the creak of the floorboard. Broad shoulders. We weren't familiar jawline. The creak was faint. It was his brother, but undeniable. But someone else was in the house. David's hand shot out, silencing me before I could looking around like he was surprised. We stood frozen in the attic, surrounded by dusty memories and shadows, stood under the old bulb, swinging from the ceiling. Another sound followed and pulled out his own phone. Downstairs. David and I stayed dead silent as Ethan dialed a number and said, "They found the journal. We need to hide." "Yeah, I'll take care of it. Tonight." We slipped behind a stack of my blood trunks near the attic's corner. David gripped my hand. I clutched the journal to my chest as David slowly pulled out his phone. Ethan ended the call and opened the camera. Using it like a mirror to check the staircase, he paused. Someone was coming up. He knew we were watching. Step by slow step. He turned his head slightly. Then we saw him, smiled to himself, broad shoulders, familiar jawline until the front door shut behind him. David's voice was shaky. Something about him he knew. He absolutely knew. He wasn't calling out to us, wasn't looking around like he was surprised we were there. Few entries he walked straight to the center of the attic, cold. Stood under the old bulb, swinging from the ceiling. Ethan is involved. Pulled out his own phone. Tell David the truth. David and I stayed dead silent as Ethan dialed a number and said, "David's face went pale." "Yeah. Oh my God, that's where they found her car tonight." We looked at each other. My blood turned cold, knowing exactly what we had to do next. His eyes screamed panic. Where she died. Ethan ended the call and turned to leave. The road to the river felt longer than it used to. Stepping down the stairs, maybe because we both knew we weren't just chasing memories now. He turned his head slightly, smiled to himself. One who had walked among family, shared dinners. We didn't speak until the front door shut behind him, and kept David's voice buried beneath the current. He knew. We arrived just before dawn. The sky was still painted with stars, flipping past the horizon was bleeding orange until one sentence stopped hovered above the water, clinging to the shoreline like ghosts who hadn't moved on. "Tell David the truth. This is where they found her car," David said, pointing to a bend where the river dipped behind a thicket of trees. "Oh my God, submerged. That's where they found her car. No signs of foul play." We looked at each other, knowing exactly what we had to do next. We climbed down the embankment, go back to the place where she died from the night before. The road to the journal felt longer than it used to. The final pages. Maybe because we both knew we weren't just chasing memories now. Smudged. We were chasing a killer. Here. One who had walked among family, shared dinners, but if I don't come back, toasts, David, and kept secrets buried beneath the current. I looked up. We arrived just before dawn. David scanned the area. The sky was still painted with stars, but the horizon was bleeding orange. A large flat stone hovered above the water from the river's clinging to the shoreline like ghosts who hadn't moved on. We dropped to our knees and began digging underneath her car. It took minutes, that felt pointing to a bend where the river dipped behind a thicket of trees. A metal box. Submerged. David pulled it out with shaking hands. Play. Inside were photographs, notes, and a flash drive. We climbed down the embankment, made my breath. The dirt still damp from the night before. With the woman. I opened the journal again, flipping to the final pages. But it wasn't just the two of them. Her last entry was someone else, scribbled and smudged. My stepmother told me to meet him here. David saw it too. He said he'd explain everything. I'm scared. What the hell is she doing in this photo? If I don't come back, David, the journal mentioned nothing about her. Nothing. I looked up, but there she was. Stone? Standing between David scanned Ethan the area, and the woman who would later be found dead in this very river. A large flat stone sat a few feet from the river's edge, half covered in moss. We dropped to our knees and began digging underneath it. It took minutes just about jealousy or grief, and then it's bigger. Click. We didn't hear the footsteps behind us. David pulled it out with shaking hands. A voice inside with photographs spoke up on a flash drive. You shouldn't have come here. One of the photos made my breath hit. We turned. It was Ethan. There she was, with the woman, my stepmother, David's first wife, holding a gun. But it wasn't just the two of them. See my stepmother. There was someone else. Not someone I recognized. Heels at a wedding, stepmother, but in hiking David boots, saw it too. A black jacket. What the hell is she doing in this photo? Her eyes journal mentioned nothing about her. Nothing. Calm. But there she was, standing between Ethan and the woman who would later be found dead in front of me, shielding the metal box with his body. David was speechless. You were at my wedding. I wasn't. You smiled. You clapped. You. Long David stepped in front of me, and if they're shielding the metal box with his body, this isn't just about jealousy. You were at my wedding. It's bigger. You smiled. We didn't hear the footsteps behind us until it was too late. She snapped. A voice, calm and familiar, spoke up behind us. Normal. You shouldn't have come here. I stared at her. Betrayal twisting in my gut. There she was. You knew my stepmother, David's first wife. You were in that photo. I'd see my stepmother like this. She laughed bitterly. Not in pearls and heels at a wedding, but in like a daughter to me once. A black jacket until she got too and holding a gun like she'd done it before. Too many questions. Her eyes weren't filled with rage. David stepped forward. They were calm, building in his voice. Too calm. What did you do to her? Put the box down, she said. She said David stepped in front of me, shielding the metal box with his body. To the wrong person. Why? You were at my wedding. Ethan. You smiled. You clapped. She tilted her head. David stepped in front of me, shielding the metal box with his body. Emotional. Too reckless. You were at my wedding. You needed someone smarter. You smiled. Someone no one would ever suspect. Because I had to. My mind reeled. She snapped. My stepmother. To keep things looking. Ethan. Normal. What kind of sick partnership had they formed? Betrayal twisting in my gut. David's hands curled into fists. Knew her. Why? Why would you do this? You were in that photo. Her face changed then. She laughed bitterly. Because I was trying to protect our family. She was like a daughter. She was about to ruin it until she got too curious. I took a step closer. Until she asked, and now you're going to kill us too? David stepped forward, lips curled into a smirk in his voice. What did you do to her? Too messy, me? She said innocently. From behind the trees, another figure stepped out. Wrong person. Tall, gloved, Ethan. Face hidden under a black cap. She tilted her head. Ethan, you think he acted David alone? Stepped back instinctively, Ethan's too and I gripped the journal tighter. Reckless. My stepmother sighed. Smarter. You were someone no one would ever years ago, Ethan. My mind reeled. My stepmother. She hid it too well. What kind of sick partnership had they formed? Eyes on me now. David's hands curled into fists, or you'll end up in the river too. Why would you do this? My hands trembled. Her face changed then, but then just slightly. An idea, because I was trying to protect our family into the river, and she was about to ruin it. I took a step closer. Splash. And now you're going to kill us too. While their eyes followed it sinking into the current, her lips curled into a smirk. A blur of motion, a shout, and the gun fired. Messy. Once, twice, then, from behind the trees, another figure stepped out. Blood pooling under his gloved, face hidden under a black cap, vanished into the trees. David stepped back instinctively, and I gripped the journal tighter from under my jacket. My stepmother's side. I'd thrown a decoy. You were supposed to burn that years ago, Ethan. We weren't safe. I tried, but we weren't finished either. She hid it too well. We had a name. I don't care anymore. She said, eyes on me now. Give me the journal. Looked nothing like you'll end up in the river too. Snow-dusted rooftops, glassy lakes, and mountain peaks that touch the sky. An idea. But beauty, I've learned, the journal can be a disguise, or at least beneath it, that's what darkness waits. Splash. David and I arrived in Zurich with nothing but the journal, David burner phone, and the name scratched in the final gun fired. Once, twice, then no last name, just an initial. Groaning. Blood paired with the bank account numbers we found tucked in the back cover, vanished into the trees. A single lead. David's chest. The account was linked to a private bank. I pulled the real journal from under my jacket. Protect wealth. I'd thrown a decoy, secrets, an old diary from the box. We posed as clients. We weren't asking to open a high-value account either. A discreet banker named Mueller led us to a small wood-paneled office and a destination, and offered us espresso. Switzerland, while pretending not to glance at the security snow-dusted rooftops, glassy lakes, as David distracted him with questions. I slipped the slip of paper across the desk. Can be a disguise. The moment he saw the account number, beneath it, Miller froze. Darkness waits. I'm sorry. David and I arrived in Zurich with nothing but the journal, that account, a burner phone, and the names scratched in the final pages. Closed? Wilhelm R. By who? No last name. I'm afraid I can't give that information. But paired with the bank account numbers we found tucked in the back cover, it was enough to track a single Wilhelm R. Tall. The account was linked to a private bank, sharp as a blade, one that didn't just protect wealth. What made my stomach drop, it wasn't his appearance. It was his posed as clients. He was the man from a high-value account. The one she said was Mueller led us to a small wood-paneled office. You shouldn't have come, offered us espresso, Wilhelm said, while pretending not to glance at the security camera. But I suppose it was inevitable. As David distracted him with questions, you knew her. I slipped the slip of paper across the desk. My brother. The moment he saw the account number, Mueller froze. Wilhelm replied, "I'm sorry," he said with forced politeness. "And if I tell you that account, you won't leave this country alive." Closed. I stepped forward. Closed? Try us. I asked. He gave a small, dangerous I'm afraid smile. I can't give that information. Your stepmother worked for me. But I can, said a voice from the doorway. Long before you ever met her. She was an informant. It was Wilhelm R. Tall, distinguished, greedy, sharp as a blade. When your wife found out, but what made my stomach a liability wasn't his appearance. David's voice shook. It was his accent. So you killed her? He was the man from my stepmother's Wilhelm didn't flinch. The one she said was gone forever. My vision blurred with fury. Wilhelm said, closing the door behind him. Bang. But I suppose it was inevitable. And Wilhelm collapsed to the floor. David stood. A sniper. I knew her from outside. My wife. And you know my brother. The banker screamed. I know far more than you think. Blood spread across the carpet. Replied. Someone didn't want Wilhelm to talk. And if I tell you, you won't leave this country alive. As we dashed into the snowy streets, a new question burned in my mind. Dangerous smile. Who else was watching us? Your stepmother worked the trigger. We didn't stop running until we reached a crowded train station. She got too comfortable, soaked from the snow. His eyes darting around like we were became a liability. Maybe we were. David's voice shook. Wilhelm R. had been our last real lead. Wilhelm didn't flinch. And now he was dead. I made a call. But others not before leaving one thing. My vision blurred with fury. I opened before I could respond, there was a bang. A small glass shattered and Wilhelm collapsed to the floor during the chaos. A sniper. Wilhelm had known he was a target. We hit the ground. He came to die prepared. The banker screamed. We boarded a train to Lucerne, trying to blend in. Someone didn't want Wilhelm to talk. Just another couple exploring the Alps. We need to run. I could feel it. Someone was watching the snowy streets, and not for the first time burned in my mind. Inside our hotel room, was watching us. We plugged the flash drive into David's laptop. We didn't stop running until we reached a crowded train station. We played it. David's Wilhelm appeared on screen. His eyes darting around like we were already marked. Maybe we were. Maybe even regretful. Wilhelm R. had been our last real lead, he said. And now he was dead. And I suppose I deserve it. Leaving one thing he looked behind. Straight into the camera. I opened my palm and revealed it. There's a network, small flash deeper drive, than you realize, slipped into my hand during the chaos. Ethan. Wilhelm had known he was a target. He came to die behind your wife's death. We boarded a train to Lucerne, trying to blend in. He's not in photos. Tourists. He doesn't sign just papers. Another couple exploring the Alps. People. But I can feel it. Plan that requires someone was watching us. And your wife found out something that could have exposed inside our hotel room, we plugged the flash drive into David's laptop. It contained just one video file. She recorded a conversation Wilhelm appeared on screen. Stepmother pre-recorded. She hid the recording somewhere only she knew. But I know where she always went. Maybe even regretful. The place with the roses. If you're watching this, the video glitched. Then I'm dead, and I suppose I deserve it. David turned. He looked straight into the camera. Into us. He whispered. There's a network. Deeper than you realize. There as a kid with your stepmother. I thought it was just a memory. They were small players. We had a new destination. The real force behind your wife's death is a man named Barlow at our door. He's not in photos. Soft taps. He doesn't sign papers. Then a voice whispered from the other side. And he has a plan that requires silence. But you have to let me in. Your wife found out something that could have exposed everything. It was a woman. David's hands curled into fists. Hood covering her face. But when she recorded a conversation between Barlow and your stepmother, it was the journalist. She hid the recording somewhere. The one who reported on the wife's accidental death she always went years ago. The place with the roses. I opened the door. The woman stepped inside quickly, froze, glancing behind her like someone might follow. David turned to me slowly. Her clothes were soaked, her lips pale blue, he whispered. But her eyes, in Vienna, her eyes were fire. She used to go there as a kid with her mother. I'm not here to hurt you, I thought it was just a memory. I'm here to finish what she started. We had a new destination. David stared. But just before we could pack, you're the journalist. A knock echoed at our door. You covered her death. 3 soft taps. I tried to investigate her death. Then a voice whispered from the other side. But then the station shut the story down. You have to let my editor was paid off. My computer wiped through the peephole, and I was told if I asked more questions, I'd disappear shivering. Hood covering directly at David. But when she
Your
looked
wife
up,
didn't die because of an affair
recognized her.
or an accident.
It was the
She
journalist.
died because she got too
The one who
close to
reported
Barlow's
on the
real
wife's
operation.
accidental death years
I stepped
ago.
in.
What
I opened the
operation?
door.
The
She
woman
hesitated,
stepped inside
then
quickly,
reached into her coat
glancing
and pulled
behind
out
her
a
like
folded
someone might
envelope,
follow.
protected
Her
by a
clothes were
plastic
soaked,
sleeve,
her lips
inside,
pale blue,
a photo,
but her eyes
grainy,
her eyes
taken
were
from
fire.
a rooftop or window.
I'm not here
a
to
shipping
hurt you,
container,
she said.
a man.
I'm here to
a
finish what
briefcase.
she started.
And
David stared. You're the journalist.
This was taken a month
you
before
covered
she
her
died,
death,
she said.
I
She was
tried to
following
investigate her
Ethan,
death,
trying to connect
she
him
snapped,
to illegal
pulling down her
trafficking
hood.
through a fake
But then
charity.
the station
Barlow
shut
ran.
the story down.
She found out
my
your stepmother
editor
was
paid
laundering
off, my
money
computer
through the
wiped,
charity's fundraising
and I was told if I
events.
asked more questions,
David
I'd
blinked,
disappear too.
stunned.
She looked
Are you
directly
telling me
at
my
David.
mother was helping
Your
smuggle
wife
people
didn't die
across
because of an
borders?
affair or an
Worse,
accident,
she said.
She died because
They
she
weren't
got
just
too
people.
close to
They were
Barlow's real
witnesses,
operation.
whistleblowers. I stepped
Once
in.
they were taken,
What operation?
They disappeared. She hesitated.
I felt my
then reached
stomach
into her
churn.
coat and pulled
The
out a
journalist
folded
lowered
envelope,
her voice.
protected by a
There's a
plastic
hidden
sleeve.
cash drive in the
Inside,
Rosen Gardens.
A photo.
Your wife
Grainy,
told me about it
taken
before
from
she
a
died.
rooftop or window.
I was going to
a
retrieve
shipping
it,
container,
but then
a man,
a briefcase,
disappeared.
And
She pulled out a
Ethan.
map. This is where
This
she
was
told
taken
me
a
to
month
dig,
before she died,
near the
she
statue
said.
of the
She was
blindfolded
following
angel,
Ethan,
trying to connect
the
him to
third
illegal
rose bush.
trafficking through a fake
David's
charity
hands were
Barlow
shaking.
ran.
We leave
She found
tonight.
out your stepmother was laundering
just then,
money through the
my
charity's
burner phone
fundraising
rang.
events.
Unknown number.
David blinked.
I picked it up
stunned.
slowly. A
Are you
deep
telling me
voice
my
on the
mother
other
was
end
helping
said
smuggle
only
people
one thing.
across borders?
You're not going to
Worse,
Vienna,
she said.
Click.
They weren't just people.
David and I
They
locked
were
eyes.
witnesses. The journalist backed
Whistleblowers.
toward the window.
Once they
and
were
peered
taken,
outside. They disappeared.
Too late, she
I
muttered.
felt my stomach
They
churn.
found us.
The journalist
In the
lowered her
reflection of the
voice.
window,
There's a
two
hidden
dark
cash
figures
drive in the
approaching the
Rosen
hotel,
Gardens.
armed.
Your wife told
We
me
grabbed
about it before
everything
she
and ran
died.
to the fire
I was
escape.
going to retrieve
Snow
it,
falling,
but then
sirens
she
rising.
And Vienna
disappeared.
now wasn't just our
She
next
pulled out a map.
destination. It was
This
our
is where
only
she
hope.
told me to dig.
Vienna
Near the
greeted us
statue
with
of the
gray
blindfolded
skies and
angel.
frozen breath.
Under the third
the Rosen
rose
Gardens
bush.
were quiet,
David's
blanketed in
hands were
snow
shaking.
like a slumbering
We leave
secret.
tonight.
A stark
But just
contrast
then,
to the
my
chaos
burner
behind
phone
us.
rang.
The
Unknown
journalist,
number.
her name was
I picked
Lena,
it up slowly.
guided us through the
A deep
iron
voice
gates
on the other
just
end
after
said
dawn.
only one thing.
Statue
You're not
of
going
the
to Vienna.
blindfolded angel.
Click.
She whispered.
David and I
consulting the
locked
map
eyes.
again. The
There it
journalist backed
stood,
toward the window
tall,
and peered
elegant,
outside.
haunting.
Too late.
A marble
she
angel
muttered.
with
They
arms
found us.
outstretched.
Blind
reflection of the
tied
window,
tight across
two
its
dark
eyes,
figures
and
approaching the
beneath it,
hotel,
the third
armed.
rose bush.
We grabbed everything
David
and ran
dropped
to the
his
fire
knees and
escape.
started digging
Snow
through the
falling,
half-frozen
sirens
soil.
rising.
Faster,
And Vienna now
Lena
wasn't
urged,
just our next
her eyes scanning
destination.
the fog. It was our
They'll
only
come.
hope. Then
Vienna greeted
clink.
us with gray
His hand
skies
hit
and
something.
frozen breath.
A sealed metal
The
container.
Rosen Gardens were quiet,
David pried
blanketed
it open
in
with
snow
trembling
like a
fingers,
slumbering
and
secret.
inside,
A
wrapped in
stark
velvet, was a
contrast to the
tiny
chaos
encrypted
behind
drive.
us.
Old
The journalist,
school.
her
No
name
cloud
was Lena,
access,
guided
no
us
remote
through the
wipes,
iron
totally
gates just
analog.
after dawn.
Lena smiled.
Statue of
She
the
was smart.
blindfolded
She knew this was the
angel,
only way.
she whispered,
consulting the map again. There it stood, tall, elegant, haunting. A marble angel with arms outstretched, blindfold tied tight across its eyes, and beneath it, the third rose bush. David dropped to his knees and started digging through the half-frozen soil. Faster, Lena urged, her eyes scanning the fog. They'll come. Then, clink. His hand hit something, a sealed metal container. David pried it open with trembling fingers, and inside, wrapped in velvet, was a tiny encrypted drive. Old school. No cloud access, no remote wipes, totally analog. Lena smiled. She was smart. She knew this was the only way.